My name is Mary Jo Rapini, and I'm a licensed therapist. Prior to this episode, this incident, what I'm calling now a blessing in my life, I was very removed, detached from an organized religion or feeling close to God. In fact, I felt quite estranged from Him. And some of the context of that was I was a psychologist, and my husband and I had moved to Lubbock, Texas, where it was a better job for him. And prior to going to Lubbock, I was in Houston, Texas, and I loved it there. And I was trained as a psychotherapist. I did general marriage and family. And then I went on for additional training to become a sex therapist. So when I was moving to Lubbock, a lot of people were saying, "Oh my God, you're going to be great because you won't have to worry about job. There's very few sex therapists there." And I got the idea that, wow, this is going to be great for my career too. But then when I got there, I realized that the reason there weren't a lot of sex therapists there was because it's quite a conservative area. And it's very difficult to get established with a medical community there as a sex therapist at the time that I was there. So to just give you backstory, what my job was, I was the head of a psycho-oncology unit at Texas Tech and University Medical Center. And basically, the reason I say I'm head is because I was the only one that was doing that. And I got into cancer quite backwards, whereas a oncologist hired me to run support groups for his cancer patients. Because many times when you have cancer, you also have intimacy issues with your family and also with your body. You're estranged from it. You go through treatments and you don't feel like the same woman or man many times. So he brought me through a back door, and I began running these groups, and I found my niche, if you will, with cancer patients. So I was working with them. And I worked in a pediatric floor as well. And I saw a lot of terrible things, kids getting cancer, painful treatments and struggling. And it just started deteriorating how I felt about a God, a loving God especially. So now on to my story. I'm carrying that in my heart at the time of the story. I was going to Gold's Gym. It was a Saturday morning, the 19th of April, which we call I was raised as Roman Catholic. It was Holy Saturday. And the next day was Easter, and I was having a big brunch at my house. So I had a lot of things on my mind. I went to the gym and I was working out. And one of the machines I was working out on was when you push. Like, I was building my body, and I had this idea, I can lift twice my body weight with my legs. I should be able to do that with my arms. So I had been really dedicated to working on my chest and my arms. And with one of the machines, you sit in a chair and then you push. And I was loading up on weights that day. So when I pushed the first time, I went, "Oh my God, like, that's really heavy." And, I don't know if I can do another one. I had 98 pounds on it and I weigh 107. So I thought, I'm just going to do one more. And I did one more. And as I pushed, I felt a sharp jabbing pain in the back of my neck. It felt like I had been stabbed or something. So I got up, and I was a little bit disoriented because the pain was so intense. I got off the machine. I kind of stumbled to the side. I was thinking, what was that? Because in my back history, I was a nurse prior to becoming a psychologist. And I started going through my whole nervous system, like something in my neck, something in my cerebral fluid, something in my spine, something's not right. I can't walk well. I walked over to the bubbler, and when I pushed down on the lever to get water, all of a sudden this whole right side started jerking, like convulsing, and I had no control. And I was profusely sweating, and my neck hurt so bad that I thought, man, I've done something terrible, like I'm really sick. And I had been just recently diagnosed and treated for high blood pressure. And I had taken that pill that morning. So I kept thinking maybe it was something, associated with that. Anyway, I laid down, and the person, one of the people working out who knew me there, said, "Hey, muscle woman, what's the matter?" And I said, "If you can, go get help, because I think I need an ambulance. I hurt myself." And so he was really scared because my face was white, and obviously I'm laying down. on the gym floor. So we went to the front, and this owner or woman watching the gym that morning came back, and she started talking to me and just soothing me, and called an ambulance and called my family. And it was just lucky that my husband was in town for Easter weekend, because he had taken a job at MD Anderson. This was toward the end of our 8-year time in Lubbock when this happened. In fact, we were getting prepared to move back to Houston, which I was very excited about. And I used to joke about it, that I got to get out of Lubbock before this town ends up killing me, because everybody I had worked with eventually had succumbed to cancer or was very sick. So anyway, the ambulance took me to the hospital, and there was, they did CAT scans, they did MRIs, and they found out that I had had a bleed. And there was so much blood in my head that they didn't know if I would survive the night. It so happened that all the neurosurgeons in Lubbock, and I think there's like 4 of them, that weekend had gone to a conference in Santa Fe. So the only one who was in town was this retired one, and he was a friend of my husband's. So he spoke with Ron, and he said, her head is full of blood, and they had tried to do an angiogram, but there was so much blood, and the only person that could do it was a pediatric neurologist who also read these angiograms. He said there was so much blood he couldn't see where it was coming from. So their option was, we can kind of stabilize her and just keep an eye on her, but she could die within 24 hours, or we could fly her to Dallas. There were specialists there who would take me on. And my husband and I had a pact that if one of us were, in the event one of us had a catastrophic illness or something, that we would not leave each other. I watched a lot of people die alone, and it's terrible. And I got this sense that when you are dying, you should have another human who loved you or can love you. Until God takes your hand, they've got your hands and they're holding them. So my husband was told he couldn't go in the jet with me, that it would have been too much weight, or the weight would have been off, and to pressurize the cabin, they just wouldn't take that risk with him there. So he decided, and because I was in and out of consciousness, I was able to talk to him. I was extremely relaxed. And I keep going back to the reason I was so relaxed, because I'm not a relaxed person. I'm very hyper, very anxious in my real life. Well, I used to be. In the ambulance, I don't know if you've ever had the kind of pain that it can make you go mad. Like, it can drive you crazy. It hurts so bad. And going over every bump, I told God, I can't handle this. I need your help. And I don't care if I live. I've had a good life. And if it's your will that I be gone, then I want you to know I'm grateful. And I said that at a time, I always thought that was the bravest thing anyone could ever say. And my cancer patients used to tell me that they submitted to God. And when they did, they suddenly got a feeling that it was in his hands, a true letting go, if you will. And it happened to me. I got the same feeling. And as I let go of controlling my condition, it seemed that my condition flowed in a way that I wouldn't never be responsible for. So when the neurosurgeons told me later, probably part of the reason that you did so well is because you were in great shape, I can't accept that. And the reason I can't accept it is because that moment of submitting to God was so powerful for what it changed in my thinking, in my brain, and the organization of my illness, like the trajectory, that I cannot explain it to you. I can only tell you that it was real. So anyway, I woke up on Easter Sunday. They had stabilized me with meds and everything. And they were guarded, but they were somewhat pleased that with my ability, like it seemed like I was more awake, it seemed I was more alert, and they were doing ultrasounds, like it seemed like every 30 minutes on my brain. They were doing numerous tests all the time. And my husband and several friends came over to see me. I was supposed to host a brunch at my house, And I was adamant that my husband and my kids host that brunch. Only now do I see how ridiculous it was. But I really thought that I may die. And if I did, I wanted them to have other people. And I have to explain this to you. The fact that I might die, it was not sad to me. It was not heartbreaking either. It was almost like I wasn't elated. It's just that I was so totally in God's will at that moment. I don't know what other adjective I can put with that. So anyway, to continue the story, I made it through Easter Sunday, and my husband was sending out emails and texts to my family and friends. And Monday, I continued to progress, not getting worse, not getting better for sure, but I was looking pretty good, except a few people that would come in say, you look kind of green or you look kind of yellow. And my husband, Ron, said, Mary, I'm not sure, because I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to wait here until the blood resolves. And blood was running out of my ears, out of my nose. When you have a bleed in your brain, because your brain is so organized that it knows how much fluid it can have, and it had way too much. So you have like 3 huge valves in the back of your head, and those drain. I also, at this time, I had a brain drain. In other words, they had put a tube in my forehead and they were draining out excess blood. And they had it taped, so I never really saw myself. But I think when my children came to see me, they were aghast with it. I think that was very difficult for them. I think it was also very difficult for Ron to see. But as far as pain, I had a terrible headache. I had a terrible neck ache, and you just feel nauseated and you're incredibly weak, which for me, since I'm so jumpy and usually anxious, probably worked in my favor, because they didn't want me out of bed. I couldn't move, and I had no desire to move or get out of bed. And what happened was I woke up about 2 a.m. Tuesday morning to nurses putting stuff on me. At this time, I had been in the surgical ICU. They moved me out to the floor on Monday, and now I was on the floor going back in. And they were putting like monitors on me. They were waking me up. They were doing all kinds of tests. And they told me, you're not doing well. We called your husband, and we're going to move you over to the ICU so we can keep a good eye on you. Apparently, my O2 sats had been dropping. So when I was in the surgical ICU, I guess there had been an emergency call to these neurosurgeons in Santa Fe. I don't think they were supposed to come back until Thursday, but 2 of them came back, if I recall that correctly. Anyway, what happened was they decided that they were going to do surgery on my brain. They had been able to locate the aneurysm, and they believed I was getting septic. And without this brain surgery, I was not a candidate for them to coil it because it had already burst. And coiling would have been easier because they could have gone through the groin and just not had to open the brain, but they had to open my skull. And during that time, when they were getting me ready and talking to Ron, I saw a white light, and it was in the upper right-hand corner of my room. I had been in ICUs, I had been in surgeries as a nurse. I had worked in the hospital a good portion of my life. And this light was not like anything else I had ever seen. It was a bit ethereal. It was a kind of a different color. It was luminescent, but it also was soft. And as I looked at it, I thought, what is that? Is that a tunnel? Because it almost has like that round, the corrugated side almost, as if it would be an encapsulated tunnel. And then as I looked at it, I thought, well, I'm not impressed because it's so little. And then all of a sudden, I am moving into it. And it's quite odd the way your body moves into it, because you're not lying down flat. You're kind of upright. And your eyes work in a way that, I know this sounds strange and even corny, but your eyes can see behind you. I could see and sense that my body, the shell, was on the bed. But what was unbelievable to me is I believe my consciousness, which is very important to me, was with me. I think it was part of my soul, because I was able to see what people were wearing. And I could see Ron. Ron was there. He had his head in his hands. He was crying, and he was looking at this document. It was a surgical consent. And all of a sudden, I left that. I didn't care about it. I was so focused on what I was seeing. And I came to this luminescent, like a light pinkish room. And I got the sense that there were no walls. It was just mass. It was an opening, if you will. And I wasn't the only person going through it. It felt like there were other people. And I'm referring to felt a lot because it doesn't make sense. But you sort of see with your senses too. Everything is with you as one. And I felt like I knew that place. Like I had felt that place before. I had been there. And all of a sudden, I didn't see the exact action, how it happened. God was holding me. And he said, it's not your time. And I was so disappointed because I wanted to be there with him. And very different from what I ever expected. The love was not human. And it was comparing it like to human love would be plastic, like a credit card, whereas this was really deep. And I said, I can't stay, but why not? And I started telling God all of my accolades. I gave free cancer care. I would come up at night when people were dying. I would pray for people. I tried to be a good mother. I tried to be a good wife. I had been a good worker. Every positive thing I could think about myself, which is just so awful and now, or arrogant or whatever. I tried to tell him, and he said, let me ask you one thing. Have you ever loved anyone the way you've been loved here? And I said, no, that's impossible. I am a human, just to remind God of my humanness. And then the sensation was a closer hold from God, and he said, you can do better. And I don't remember leaving that space, but I woke up to Ron, like shaking me because he felt like I was unconscious, and saying, Mary, we have to make this decision together. Like, they have to open your brain and they have to clip this vessel, and you might never be the same. You might not be able to run, Mary, or even walk. And I'm a runner. I was a runner. I was running 50 and 100 milers. Running was my life. And he said, and your personality might change completely. I need you to tell me it's okay. And I said, it's okay. I'm not going to die anyway. And Ron said, well, I hope not, Mary. I think if you pray, you're close to God, I think you'll be okay. And I said, I just talked to God, and it's not my time, Ron. And I woke up after the surgery, and I was upset. I was depressed. In fact, I was depressed that I was back here for several months after. And what I live with every day now is I live with this incredible memory, or whatever's been branded on me. And I ask myself, am I doing enough? Am I standing up for God's goodness? Am I being conscientious with what he gave me? Am I loving others the way he told me to practice loving more? And the answer is always, I'm trying, but it's very difficult. I will tell you one thing. I think I'm a better therapist. And I think I'm a better therapist because I judge less. And I think compassion is the most important gift we give each other. And just get out of this mindset of who's right and who's wrong. I mean, we're all connected, and we're all going back there, all of us. And there is a God, and he is our source. He is my source. I believe he's yours too, but you have to get there on your own. And I believe he knows each and every one of us. He connects to us in a way that we can't possibly understand. We're very limited with our minds, with our brains, with our bodies here. it's left me with a deep sense of compassion and just the abundance. I mean, I can't look at anything without thinking, what can I do? How can I?
But they said that what is happening in the world has already happened. We already had nuclear war. We already had full one world government. We already had all of the plagues and the natural disasters, and we've already affected the weather and the climate, and we did all of this already. This is nothing new. When they keep talking about the new earth, they told me the new earth is not new. We just can see that this timeline is terrible for humanity. But there are many things that I did still see coming, yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here on Life After Life. My name is Spirit Dr. Sunshine Frost. I am a doctor of theocentric psychology, but I left medical school to pursue intuitive career. So they called me the Spirit Doctor for many years. And now I'm here to talk about some amazing new earth downloads and my near-death experience. I was raised with a really religious background, but my family didn't follow it. You know, I was raised to understand being Baptist, but I converted to Mormonism, and I lived my life very strictly Mormon. I really believed in the church, and I lived that life as best I could. And I thought that I was really reaching a high plateau of spirituality because I was doing everything that the church had taught me to do. And I thought that, you know, this is what it's all about, to be close to God. But when I was 17, before I had joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I had a near-death experience with drugs. I was a teenager, 17, and I found myself in a situation where I was trying to fit in. I was trying to be like the older kids, run with the older kids. And so in that moment, the angel basically said to me, is this how you want to die? And I'm like, no. And as soon as I kind of made that decision in my mind, I was raised up about 2 levels. That's all I know how to put it. I didn't go through a huge tunnel. I just was lifted up 2 levels above that. And it was almost like, it's like where people go to decide. They're not all the way in heaven. They're definitely not all the way in the heavy earth realm that we're in. It's as if there's a decision-making process that happens for a lot of people that cross over. Not everybody gets this because some people have already decided it's their timeline. They've already made those decisions. But for me, I had not made the decision. What happened to me was called a V. I was told that I would be given something that would be important to do, but that my life would still be really hard. And it was my choice to go back. There was nothing about this that was forced on me. I was allowed to come back. And I knew that I had to come back. I absolutely had failed. I do remember this. They had given me the guide and it felt like I was there 2 weeks, to be quite honest. If I had to break it down, it was a long time. I felt like I was there for weeks, receiving downloaded information, looking at my life path before today, like before that moment, maybe other lives. But there was a lot of downloaded information that I came back with. I couldn't remember it. But when I've needed it throughout my life, I've been able to recall things that I didn't know until the moment I needed them. And then the download would release and I would receive the information or the healing or whatever I needed. Yeah, so I had a second NDE. My heart stopped. I had heart surgery in 2021. And that heart surgery, I was going to dinner with my husband. I thought I was doing great. And I started to have an arrhythmia that ended up being a fatal arrhythmia. And we happened to pull off of an exit. And right when we pulled off, an ambulance had turned the wrong way going to the hospital. Happened to be on the exact exit when we called 911. They put me in the back of the ambulance. They restarted my heart twice. During this time, I was told that not to be afraid, that I would have a near-death experience, but it wasn't my time yet. So I ended up in heart surgery. 6 days later, I had a 6-hour-long ablation to fix the AFib, to fix the other things that were going on. And about 9 months went by, and I kept feeling like I was going to die. I had this distinct feeling in September, actually right about this time, 2 years ago. So in 2022, I had a feeling I was dying. I kept telling my family, I feel like I'm dying. And I was very depressed. I was sad. It just came out of nowhere. So I went through a lot of depression. I would call it another dark night of the soul. I really felt like something was off. And finally, my girlfriend, her name is Raina Energy Healer. She is a Native American healer that I work with in my practice. And I have another Native American healer, two of them, came to my house with an intervention that they were going to do a healing on me and snap me out of this. Like, we got to snap her out of this. What is going on? They came to my home to do a healing on me. And one was at my head and one was at my feet. And they started to push the healing energy in my body as I was also accepting that healing energy. And my soul came right up out of my body. I started shaking, I started crying, and I could feel my soul lifting up. And at that moment, I was in another dimension completely. I could see them, but it was in my mind's eye only. I was completely in an area that looked almost like a reception area, but it was pretty pure white. I saw my body, not the body that I had in Earth, but I saw my actual real body, which looks similar to this, a little bit taller. And my body was in a suspended sleep state. And my actual mother and father, they were like very tall, light beings. I can't tell you if they were human. They looked very human, but I couldn't ever see their face. They were very bright white. So I would almost want to describe them as angels, but I know that they could have been extraterrestrial, they could have been human, and they were shielding with light. I can't tell you that because I wasn't allowed to know that. But what they did tell me is they said my name by another name, which I'm not going to share. And I knew my name when they called it. And they said, "Don't be afraid, you've already died." And I was very upset with this. And I said, "What do you mean I've already died? I'm dying right now. How can you say this?" And they said, "You died here to be born onto Earth. And we sent you back. And there are thousands of you that are being sent back to Earth right now." I've got the chills even talking about this. They said that everyone that believes that the new Earth is shifting and coming in, it's because this is not a new Earth for us. They said that me and many like me have already lived through this timeline, and that we died because of the decisions that are being made on Earth, and that we were sent back from the future to change the outcome of what's coming in the next 10 years. They told me that not to be afraid to die, that this is only a simulation, but if you stop the simulation, you do have to make a decision to come back and do it again, or you make a decision to become a guardian or guide spirit on the other side, which takes 5 times as long to learn the lessons, because instead of you doing it, you're having to use almost like a puppet body. You have to walk in on this, you have to take somebody that's in human form and become a walk-in spirit and actually try to use that person to accomplish your tasks, which is very difficult. But they said that what is happening in the world has already happened. We already had nuclear war. We already had full one world government. We already had all of the plagues and the natural disasters, and we've already affected the weather and the climate, and we did all of this already. This is nothing new. When they keep talking about the new Earth, they told me the new Earth is not new. We sent you back because you've got to create 2 timelines. One timeline, it's going to get much worse for everybody, right around 1999 to 2000. And I've been doing those consistently. And I began working with the past life downloads right after COVID. And then now I do past life and current life healings, which is called the 5D New Earth download. That healing is done, and people that are healing now are saying, "I can't believe I changed my timeline." They actually feel as if they're going to live longer. They can see what they're supposed to be doing now. It kind of removes some of the matrix and lets us see a little further in front of us. They don't feel like they're stuck in the past and they can't figure out why. All of them have said this year is going to be, the end of this year is all about releasing the fear, because a lot of people are in fear. Economically, yes, a lot of devastation. And we're going to see uprisings in all of the countries, not just here. Venezuela, Brazil, a lot of stuff in South America, a lot of natural disasters around Asia. There's a lot of political unrest and people that will not accept the narrative. Whatever the narrative is, whether it's going to be Republican or Democrat, they're not going to accept it. So there's going to be a great division in America. And people are going to feel, no matter which side they're on, that their race was unfair and that the race was unjust. And there's going to be a lot of uprising and bigger divisions. We have to recognize each other as humans, and we have to get beyond. This is all about division. From the COVID thing onward, it was about fear and dividing people and taking us away from our natural statehood or our natural sovereignty. And we've got to get back to that sovereignty. But no, it's not going to be easy. I mean, people are going to be pulling out of the game. I see people homeschooling, going back to the land, moving out of the cities, growing their own food, going back to, I mean, it looks like we're going back 100 years into the past, maybe more. I mean, when I see this, I see people's lives that won't even change if an EMP hits. When it does hit, they're going to be living their lives as if nothing happened. When their TV goes off, the computers go off, the phones go off. If that happens, I'm not predicting it. I think we will have some blackouts, but they're not going to have their lives change because they already received the New Earth download and they're already preparing for a different lifestyle. There are thousands all over the earth that are changing the world right now. And I don't mean politics. I mean, they're literally changing. The consciousness of the planet is splitting into two. And there's a group that's degrading, that's going back to the mammalian, back to the animal, bloodthirsty, driven, only what I can see, and very controlled. There's a narrative of control and domination. This is how it needs to be. They don't want people to think for themselves. And when COVID happened, it split people. And a lot of people were sent back that had actually originally died in the first wave of COVID before we came back to stop it. So there was people that did it differently. They chose not to fall into the narrative, not into the fear, and they actually survived it in this timeline. So this timeline is actually a reoccurring timeline, and it is about the new earth. The future has already happened. We did have many terrible things. This isn't we will, this is we already did. We used the technology that was given to us by angelic or extraterrestrial beings for war. There was a war with China. Russia went to war as well with China. The United States was a part of it. We were pulled right into the middle of it. There was I already predicted the 2 assassination attempts, but there was an assassination in that timeline that happened. It shifted to a president that nobody really knew who it was going to be. Everything was off. Yes, they didn't show me the entire download, but I remember enough of this having lived through it. There was a second lockdown. There was a whole nother pandemic that happened, and there was 2 running concurrently at the same time. The whole thing about that was it was supposed to be population control, but it went crazy. It went out of control, and it made people infertile. The cure for this pandemic made people infertile. Within 2 generations, the children were not having children. It harmed the timeline so much. It harmed the earth so much. And the wars that happened, it didn't destroy the whole earth, but it took huge parts of the earth and just destroyed entire civilizations as we know it. Civilizations were just wiped out, and we came back to change that. Not just Americans, not just Russians or Chinese. There is no race and there is no nationality in heaven. We just can see that this timeline is terrible for humanity. But there are many things that I did still see coming, yes. Political division, I see a huge awakening, massive awakening, and we have to usher in the children that are coming back. They're very old souls. They're ancient. The children being born today are the ancient ones, and that's why there's such an agenda to wipe out the kids. There's an agenda to stop, I guess, the kind of population control. There's an attack on children with all the sex trafficking, the violence that's going on, the everything that's happening with children, the abuse, the disappearances. Yeah, there's a huge attack on these kids because they are the ancient ones. They're returning to change the outcome. And the powers that be, not all powers that be, this is not all conspiracy, but it is true. There is a very dark timeline and there's a very dark agenda going on that's being exposed between Hollywood and the sex trafficking, the Epstein, and all of these things that happened. They're still happening all over the world. And the children are basically the ones that have been in this war on the front lines for about 3 decades. And we're here to change that. And we're here to expose as much darkness as possible. Even with the churches are one of the leading purveyors of crimes against children, is these groups that are going out and saying they're donating money to these poorer places. And they're actually bringing in westernized culture, and they're abusing the children in these third world countries. This isn't just a first world problem. We see the attack on the children from that perspective, and we're here to change it. So you've got a lot of people that are becoming healers. They're leaving their careers. They're moving away from the cities. They don't want to be in the city because they can feel the mind control, just the control of the way that we're living is not natural. We have to get back to a sustainable, more connected way of living with each other and with the planet itself. And everybody that's doing that, like I said, it's to protect the children that's coming. The children are so important. I mean, everybody 20 years and under are part of the Ancient Ones. They're here. And that's why the suicide rates are very high with children, the depression, the anxiety, because they're not from here and they know they're not from here. These children know that this is not their timeline. This is not what they came back for. They don't want to be here. The disconnectedness, the inability to telepathically communicate, the inability to have empathy for each other, the murder, the amount of murder with everything that we eat in the other realms. We don't kill anything to eat. In this realm, everything is bloodshed. What we eat is bloodshed. There's pain in the food. It's a lot. For these kids that have been living in a pure-esque environment, and they're ancient souls that have already lived through many times of war and healed from that and became healers and have been masters and healers and priests, and they're from Atlantis and different places. It's hard for them to be in this violent culture right now that's disconnected. We're all connected to technology. No one's connected to each other anymore. So our auric fields are not interacting. The only thing we can interact with is the planet herself, and she's not happy with us. I see a lot of natural disasters, which I have been predicting those for years. From the fires in Maui, which was such a tragedy, to the floods, the hurricanes, the freezes, everything that's going on, is Mother Earth. She's being manipulated. People say that she's causing all of these disasters. It's not so much. It's the manipulation of the weather, the seeding, it's the oceans. Everything's kind of being put in man's hands to control. And we're taking the natural order out of things. And many of us came back to just raise the consciousness of the timelines and not try to stop it. We will stop it. But in one timeline, the Earth still goes down that path. And that's why it's called the New Earth, because the people that are subscribing to a higher state of consciousness are not going to be part of that reality. That's the only way I can put it. We have already lived through this Earth life that we're now trying to navigate this time on the Earth when we have so much political unrest. We have so much war. The Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Syria, Gaza, everything that's happening with Palestine, everything that's being discovered, all of the extraterrestrials visiting the planet, which is where we are from. Many of us are star-seeded. We were star-seeded a long time ago. This isn't our first lifetime. But the ones that are coming out now saying, I'm a starseed, I'm psychic, I'm gifted, I'm receiving downloads. Yes, you are. And I'm speaking to you and to everybody else in the collective. There are many people that have been like myself. We choose to come back to this timeline to change humanity's course because we've already been seeded and we're supposed to survive. We have a mission to survive and to raise the collective consciousness away from the base. We've been killing each other and bloodthirsty as humans since the beginning. Humans are just mammals, and we are a divine intelligence put into that life form to improve it. That's why we jumped from, Homo erectus basically to Homo sapien, sapien, right? We jumped. We had a huge evolutionary jump without any basically evolution to prove why that happened, other than selective gene manipulation. And we are supposed to survive, but the primal brain of power, greed, control, destroying the planet, killing everybody, destroying each other, it's the timeline we're headed toward, the same future. But there's enough of us now that are trying to change the timelines to bring in things that are going to change the outcome of this. So they told us that I'm here from the future, just like so many others are, to be a teacher and to help others heal from the trauma. So what I do now is I am a past life, current life trauma healer. I actually heal. I do past life downloads and current downloads to help people remove the trauma from their body. And I use the New Earth 5D download to do it. And I've never seen this done. In fact, this information just came to me about 6 months ago, and I've been using it with every client with absolutely amazing results. But it's because when I thought I was dying, I asked them, why did I think I'm dying? And they said, well, you are dying, but you're dying in another timeline and you're entangled. So you're feeling that death is coming for you, because it is. In fact, the day of that healing, the next day I did die in that other timeline, and more of my energy walked into this life. So to say it as if there's 2 lifetimes going on for Sunshine, right? My oversoul Sunshine, not this Sunshine Frost, but my oversoul had 2 concurrent lifetimes going at the same time. And I was having quantum entanglement, feeling what was going on in that life, the fear, the sadness, the depression, the absolute sadness of leaving my children and leaving, because I had a whole nother life there, and my body was failing me. I didn't want to die, but it's what I had, that's just what was coming for me in that life, and I was picking up on that. So the day we did my healing, they told me that I had come back and that I would have important work to do, and I needed to finish my mission. And they said that the core of my being, which is what every soul has, we have a thing inside of us that attaches our soul to our body. It's called the core of your being. It's where that anchor point is. And that when someone loses the core of their being or it dies, the body will follow. So they'll have an overdose, a suicide, cancer, whatever it is. When that core of your being begins to diminish, it's like kind of like the Transformers with the Allspark. When you put the Allspark in, it gives the whole body energy. It's very much the same. The core of your being is what powers your auric field, or the bubble of protection around you. And when it gets very low, the auric field gets destroyed, and all environmental factors and negative energies and attachments come in, and they harm the person. And it can happen in this life or in previous lives or concurrent lives. What I do is go in there to all 12. They showed me that there was not 7 chakras. They showed me that there were 12 chakras, and that's what I work with from the beginning to the end. I work with all 12 in all timelines. And we've seen remissions of everything. I healed myself of HPV, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease. My husband had cancer. He recently had a heart attack. The same process of removing these energies will heal the body and allow your timeline to go on as far as it can. So that was just amazing to learn that we are changing history right now. I don't see us ending the wars. I still see us being in heavy conflicts all the way until next year. The difference is there was a nuclear war that happened in the first Earth, and in the new Earth, that timeline is not consistent. We're not supposed to have nuclear war in this timeline, because that poisons the Earth in such a way, it would take hundreds of thousands of years to recover from that. It's basically like Chernobyl all over again, but with 2/3 of the planet. It would kill off species. That's what happened in the original simulation. The Earth was contaminated, poisoned, and destroyed. So what didn't die instantly was poisoned in such a way animals couldn't reproduce, people couldn't reproduce. The planet itself, we lost species, we lost food, we lost our sunlight. There was so much damage that was done. Humans could not live in a simulation where they could learn anymore, because every single person's instinct on the planet was then to survive, and we regressed back to a primal state of just survival. So we had lost our ability to ascend. We had lost most of our ascension because everybody was about to kill each other for a can of corn, so to speak. It was a timeline of complete lack, scarcity, fear, and the natural human instincts took over, and we were kind of like natural born killers again. We were not living in the state that we should be in, 2024 years past the consciousness of the Christ. So we still have a decision to make. Everybody that's listening to this, everybody that's receiving the downloads, we still have a decision to make to be part of the new earth or the proper timeline. And this is also where the idea of the second coming of Christ came from, because the souls that are preaching that now actually lived through it the first time. And it wasn't that Christ himself came down and rescued us, but it was that many of the souls were rescued off the planet by the angelic beings that had brought us here. And so they didn't want everybody to be destroyed. So they're still waiting on what they call the second coming of Christ, because we already lived through it the first time. We were part of the ones that were taken up, and we didn't get to face the worst of it because we weren't a part of that timeline. We were in love, we were in harmony, we weren't eating the meat, we weren't doing the things, we were just surviving in small colonies. And because of that, we were no danger and no threat. We were still trying to live an ascended life. We hadn't kind of degraded back to our natural state of just being a mammal and just being an early human. We actually were still trying to live as an Essene or an evolved consciousness. And so we were taken up. In that timeline, we did go up into the sky and we were met in the air. So I think that's the reason why so many people now are like waiting for Jesus to come again and give us the second coming. And that's why they're living that dream, because we already went through that. That was what we went through. The second coming is not going to be someone rescuing us a second time. We've got to go inside and raise up our consciousness. You've got to raise up your consciousness. You've got to get out of fear and hatred and separation and dogma. You can't say I hate them because they're a Democrat, or I love a Republican, or I don't like this country or that country. We've got to get back to the idea that we are pure light beings, come from the light. We go back to the light, and this is a simulation, and we've got to do the work within ourselves. The most important thing you can do is to break free of the matrix, break free of the mind control, recognize that if you're in fear, you're already being part of the fear base, and that fear base is latched to the lower two chakras. The first two chakras in the body is where most people are operating from, which is lack, scarcity, greed, power, control, sex, and food. We've got to get above that. If you can just get yourself into your sacral, which is about the I am, I want to be more, I want to do what I need to do for myself and my family. Realizing that as you raise up in your consciousness, you're already being part of the solution. It's so simple. People won't do it. This is kind of what Moses was talking about when all of the children of Israel were bitten by snakes in the desert. They were wandering and they were bit by these venomous vipers. So he made a staff and he put a serpent on it, and it was called the Sadducee, and it's the actual emblem for modern medicine. But he said all you had to do was look upon this and you would be healed of a deadly snake bite. But they had so little faith, they refused to believe, and they would instead die. They would rather die than just look upon the staff and believe it. It really is that simple, to recognize that you and the earth are going to be okay. You're going to live in oneness with her, and you're going to live in oneness with the Father energy, the Mother Earth energy. Live in unity with your brothers and sisters as much as possible. I have always told my audience, prepare for what you can, but hope for the best. Prepare for the worst, because there are some hard times financially. There are some hard times that we've already been through. We're already going through it. We already have hell on earth right now. That's what we're in. That's why we came back, to change that. It's not that we're going to be destroyed. The whole earth is going to be obliterated. Absolutely not. That is fear. That already happened. That will never happen in this timeline.